I love this world of early 1970s proto-heavy metal, what we may or may not call stoner rock. This world of this when heavy meant, weight, and not just a punk inspired intensity. A certain heavy just meant how abrasive it is. Heavy meant a certain it was weighing you down onto the floor. And Dust's 1972 album Heart Attack fits the bill very well. I don't mind their first album. I find it enjoyable to a point, but this is the one that inspired me to come back to it and listen to it a second time, and I enjoy it very, very thoroughly. It's pretty fun stuff, actually. I'd like to read aloud the history of the band now. Dust was an American hard rock band active in the early 1970s. Dust was formed in 1969 by Richie Wise and two teenagers, Kenny Aronson and Mark Bell. The trio's producer and manager, Kenny Kerner, also wrote the group's lyrics. Their eponymous debut album was released on Kama Sutra Records in 1971, followed by a sophomore release, Heart Attack, issued on the same label the following year. Although Wise began writing material for a third album, the band dissolved due to lack of promotion and Wise's interest in producing. While the group only released these two albums, they later became of historical interest to collectors of early American heavy metal. Both albums were reissued on April 16, 2013 as a combined CD set titled Heart Attack/Dust Legacy Recordings, as well as on vinyl on April 20th for Record Store Day. Stoner band Red Fang covered Suicide on their 2007 tour EP2. Wise and Kerner later went into production with Kiss, among others, producing that band's first two albums. Bell's next project after Dust was Estes. He played on their 1973 eponymous album. In the mid-1970s, he joined Richard Hell and the Voidoids, playing on their first album, Blank Generation. In 1978, he replaced Thomas Erdely in the Ramones, assuming the name Marky Ramone. Marky was inducted with the Ramones into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001 and received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2011. He also later performed with Marky Ramone and the Intruders, the Remains, Marky Ramone and the Speed Kings, Teenage Head at the Misfits, and Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg, as well as on solo recordings by former bandmates Dee Dee Ramone and Joey Ramone. Bell is currently an on-air personality on SiriusXM satellite radio hosting punk rock Blitzkrieg. Bell has also appeared on numerous TV shows including The Simpsons and Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations. Aronson joined Stories, who earned a number one hit with Brother Louie. He later toured and recorded with Edgar Winter, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Bob Dylan, Billy Idol, Billy Squire, Foghat, HSAS, Sammy Hagar, Neil Schon, Kenny Aronson, Michael Shreve, Brian Setzer, Mick Taylor, Dave Edmunds, Graham Parker, Hall & Oates, Leslie West Band, Rick Derringer, Boys to Colt, Michael Monroe, Dana Fuchs, John Eddy, Mountain, Robert Gordon, Joe Cocker, Corky Lang, The Satisfactors, The Yardbirds, and Richard Barone, among others. He is currently a member of the New York Dolls. I didn't know they were still a thing. Why? Okay, fine, I guess. Let's read some radio music reviews for Dust's Heart Attack. From Hammer in 2004, Dust shows all its ability with melodic chords, force, and nice instrumental work. The selection at the hands of lead vocal and guitar master Richie Wise, side by side with bandmates Kenny Aronson bass and Mark Bell later on the Ramones, demonstrates what the title offers, a hard attack, indeed. From Ziali, Xialli, also in 2004, I bought the album when it came out. I have repurchased it on CD. It was ahead of its time and set a standard in which future bands evolved from. Pull Away, So Many Times, Learning to Die, and Suicide still seem to hold their own today. They were aggressive, creative, and innovators. They have placed their name in the history of rock and roll. Here's from Nesomai in October 2005. Not as heavy as the debut? Maybe not, but Dust got deeper as they pushed their acoustic roots to the fore. Heart Attack is a polishing of the style offered on the debut. Heavy and mellow, dovetailed with ease. But make no mistake, the rockers on this disc are turned up to 11. Oh, did I mention the great Frazetta cover? Yes, the cover is by Frank Frazetta, the famous artist who did a lot of artwork for the Robert Howard novels, and they've republished. And I don't think he ever read the novels themselves, from what I understand. I think that's an interesting factoid about Frazetta. But yeah, it's a piece of art Frazetta composed titled Snow Giants. If you like the kind of music which is usually on discs which are marketed with this kind of Frank Frazetta artwork, Obviously, Molly Hatchet accepted, interestingly enough. There's probably going to be a lot for one to like on Dust's Heart Attack, although understand that music was only allowed to be so heavy in 1972. But there's at least 3 or 4 heavy tracks on here, and they're pretty killer. The Suicide track is brutal. For those who wish they could have been, or still could be, drinking beers and ripping bongs in the early 1970s, maybe listening to Dust's Heart Attack will give you that feeling a little bit. Especially if you indulge in those sort of things, I would imagine. But give it a try. You may dig it. If you think you'll dig it, the probability's in your favour, I would think.